As we just listed there, from Thomas Massie in Kentucky to Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, Bill Cassidy in Louisiana to 5 state senators in Indiana, they all crossed Donald Trump, and this week they all lost. So is it now an established fact of life that at least within the GOP party, if you cross Trump, you lose politically?
That does seem to be the case. We've seen an impressive kind of revenge spree from Trump on these things. All of these candidates who have crossed him have lost. And you look at somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who wasn't up for re-election, but who he basically pushed out of the party and out of Congress, we can see now. So he does seem to retain a very firm grip on what goes on inside the Republican Party.
And Donald Trump just endorsed Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton for Senate in Texas over incumbent John Cornyn, which was rather a surprise because most of the party establishment believed that endorsement would come in Cornyn's favor. He is someone who's boasted of voting alongside Trump 99% of the time. Paxton brings a long history of scandals. He is quite controversial. There are fraud allegations as well. And this is what Trump said of Cornyn. He said, "He was not supportive of me when times were tough." So is this the president putting a safe Republican seat now in jeopardy just to settle a score?
I think there's a couple things going on here. I mean, it's clear that despite Cornyn's record, he has been maybe a less enthusiastic Trump backer, even when he's voted for Trump. He doesn't seem like he's really in on it in the way that Ken Paxton is. I also think, though, there is a little bit of a sign of Trump's weakness here. You know, when this primary, when it went to runoff, it was expected that Trump would endorse Cornyn. There were lots of reports to those effect. And then Trump dithered. And one reason he dithered, I think, is he was afraid of backing a loser. And then we started seeing polls showing Paxton up. And in fact, polls showing that even if Trump endorsed Cornyn, Paxton would win. And so in this case, I think Trump is following his voters a little bit and trying to sort of retroactively make himself into somebody who's on the right side of the coming primary.
So given the dynamics now in Texas, many in the party establishment had viewed Cornyn as the favored to beat James Tallarico, who's a rising Democratic star, a congressman in the state. There are no illusions that Texas is about to turn blue, but we've been here before with previous runoffs that have been rather close and in questions about whether Texas was at least borderline purple. Does this make that likelihood that much more possible, given that Cornyn, I mean, we'll see what happens next week, but if he's expected to lose and you do see someone like Ken Paxton going up against Tallarico, does that up the odds for Tallarico?
I think Democrats are much more optimistic about the possibility of beating Paxton than they are Cornyn. You know, Cornyn has a long history of winning in Texas. He's been the senator for a long time. Paxton is so scandal-plagued. You know, he had this messy divorce from his wife. There was a failed impeachment, a very closely failed impeachment over many allegations of impropriety coming from other Republicans. It was an impeachment effort led by Republicans. So although voters in Texas seem to like Paxton, or Republican voters, there's clearly a lot of, he's a very flawed candidate. And so I do think it makes it much more likely that Democrats could contend or perhaps even win. And given how much difference one seat could make in the midterms in the Senate, I think you'll see Democrats putting a lot of money into that race. And whether Republicans are going to have the same stomach to back Paxton, I think, is an interesting question, and one we'll have to be watching.
Yeah, and at the very least, Republicans will have to put much more money in this race where they weren't expecting to, assuming that Cornyn would win in the primary and obviously would get the president's endorsement. Let's talk more about what happened in Kentucky and the race against Thomas Massie. That was the most expensive House primary campaign ever, totaling some $33 million, including some $9 million from AIPAC alone and other pro-Israel groups. Massie seemed to nod to this in what was the opposite of a gracious concession. Listen to what he said.
Listen, I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Gallrein in Tel Aviv.
So aside from that blatant anti-Semitic trope, how much of Massie's loss do you think was attributed to AIPAC's funding here, or were there other issues, given his concerns over the lack of focus and the lack of attention that the Republican Party and the president himself were giving to the Epstein files and obviously the economy and the war in Iran?
Look, I think funding against Massey certainly didn't help him. But I think this fundamentally comes down to his feud with Trump. Massey has always been a very heterodox Republican. He's sort of libertarian, these eccentric views and sometimes eccentric ways of expressing them. And he's still been elected 7 times in that district. So the fact that he lost here, I think, comes down essentially to him crossing Trump. And that is on the question of backing Israel in the war with Iran. It is on the Epstein files. These are places where we have seen Massey be consistent over the years. And what has changed is the willingness of Trump and people working with Trump to really put a concerted effort into knocking him out.